like milk with flavor straws, magic straws, flavor straws.
Well, here I am.
The thing with almost human brain, Electro the robot. You asked for it.
I am Electro, mightiest of all robots.
Artificial intelligence has been a topic of growing prominence in the media and mainstream culture since 2015, as well as in the investment world, with companies that even mention the word in their business model gaining massive amounts of funding. While to many, the hype around AI may appear sudden, the concepts of modern artificial intelligence have been around for over a century, and extending further, the concept of artificial intelligence and artificial beings have been in the minds of humans for thousands of years. To better understand and appreciate this technology and those who brought it to us, as well as to gain insight into where it will take us, sit back, relax, and join me in an exploration on the history of artificial intelligence. Since at least the times of ancient Greece, mechanical men and artificial beings have been dreamt about, such as Greek myths of Hephaestus, the Greek god of smithing, and his designs of mechanical men and other autonomous machines. Progressing forward toward the Middle Ages and away from fables and myths of ancient times, realistic humanoid automatons and other self-operating machines were built by craftsmen from various civilizations. Some of the more prominently known are of Ismail al-Jazari of the Turkish Artukid dynasty in 1206 and Leonardo da Vinci in the 1500s. Al-Jazari designed what is believed to be the first programmable humanoid robots, a boat carrying 4 mechanical musicians powered by the flow of water. And Da Vinci of his various mechanical inventions built a night automaton that could wave its arm and move its mouth. Moving forward to the 1600s, brilliant philosophers and mathematicians, Thomas Hobbes, Gottfried Leibniz, and René Descartes believed in the concept that all rational thought could be made as symmetric as algebra or geometry. This concept was originally birthed by Aristotle in the 4th century, referred to as syllogistic logic, where a conclusion is drawn based on 2 or more propositions. As Thomas Hobbes stated in his book Leviathan, when a man reasons, he does nothing else but conceive a sum total from addition of parcels, or conceive a remainder from subtraction of one sum from another. These operations are not incident in numbers only, but to all manner of things that can be added together and taken one out of another. The logicians teach the same in consequence of words, adding together 2 names to make an affirmation, and 2 affirmations to make a syllogism, and many syllogisms to make a demonstration. Leibniz took Hobbes' philosophies a step further and laid the foundations for the language machines communicate in today, binary. His motivation for doing so was because he realized that mathematical computing processes could be done much easier in a number encoding with less digits. Descartes examined the concept of thinking machines, and even proposed a test to determine intelligence in his 1637 book Discourse on the Method, where Descartes famously stated the line, "I think, therefore I am." He also stated in that book, "If there were machines that bore a resemblance to our bodies and imitated our actions as closely as possible, we should still have 2 very certain means of recognizing that they are not real humans. The first is that such a machine should produce arrangements of words as to give an appropriately meaningful answer to whatever is said in its presence. Secondly, even though some machines might do things as well as we do them, or perhaps even better, they would inevitably fail in others, which would reveal that they are not acting from understanding." Also in the 1600s and throughout the Middle Ages, on the other side of the spectrum, entertainment and spirituality, growing from Greek myth, the concept of artificial beings continued to be explored, such as in fields like ancient chemistry, in other words alchemy, which was more of a pseudoscience with the goal to transform the pure into the rare, transforming mind into matter. Countless stories during this time period also portray this concept, such as the golem in Jewish folklore, which is a being created from inanimate matter. Progressing forward, we see this trope again in stories such as Frankenstein, first published in 1818, with a being reanimated from inanimate flesh.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
After the height of the first industrial revolution in the mid-1800s, where machines began replacing human muscle, and the beginnings of the field of modern computing, we see these stories take a turn towards modern sci-fi elements and portraying technology as evolving into human form. Take for example this clip from the silent film Metropolis. field of modern computing was officially born with Charles Babbage's mechanical analytical engine in the 1840s. Although it was never built due to a variety of reasons, rebuilding of his designs in present day show that they would have worked. This then means Ada Lovelace was the world's first programmer, with her algorithm on calculating Bernoulli numbers on Babbage's machine. Early computers had to be hard-coded to solve problems, and Lovelace, being the first programmer, had serious doubts on the feasibility of artificial intelligence. Nearly 200 years after Descartes, she shared similar sentiments, stating about the analytical engine, "It has no pretensions whatsoever to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to perform. It can follow analysis, but it has no power of anticipating any analytical relations or truths." This is referred to as Lovelace's objection. As a side note, be sure to check my video on the history of computing if you want more background knowledge on the evolution of the field of computing. Back on topic. A decade after Babbage's analytical engine, in the 1850s, George Boole, an English mathematician and philosopher, revolutionized the field of computing and laid the first true steps for computing-based artificial intelligence. Boole, like those before him, also believed human thinking could be mastered by laws described by the means of mathematics. He took the principles of syllogistic reasoning from Aristotle and expanded much deeper on the relationship between logic and math that Leibniz had set, thus resulting in the birth of Boolean logic. Essentially replacing multiplication with and addition with or, with the output being either true or false. This abstraction of logic by Boole was the first step in giving computers reasoning ability. This because as the field of computing evolved, a number of researchers noticed that binary numbers, 1 and 0, in conjunction with Boolean logic, true and false, could be used to analyze electrical switching circuits. This is referred to as combinational logic, in other words, logic gates that output a resultant based on their inputs. There are a variety of different types of gates, and, or, XOR, NOT, etc., and as the connections between different gates became more complex, led to the design of electronic computers. Combinational logic is the first layer in automaton theory, in other words, the study of abstract and self-operating machines. As computing evolved, additional layers began to be established, with the next one being finite state machines. These machines essentially black box sets of logic gates, and use logic between the black boxes to trigger more complex events. For an illustrative example of a type of state machine, think of an oven that has 3 states: off, heating, and idle. In state diagrams, we can illustrate state transitions and the values that will trigger them. For example, the on and off button presses of the oven being too hot, the oven being too cold, etc. The next layer in automaton theory is push-down automaton. In other words, machines with memory, which was pioneered by many individuals, such as William Eccles and Frank William Jordan, who invented the first circuits capable of memory, flip-flops, and John von Neumann, who abstracted the relationship of memory in a computing system. Finally, the last layer of automaton theory, and the class of machines we use today, is Turing machines. Before continuing, I want to point out that this was an extremely simplistic overview of a subset of automaton theory, and to definitely research with other sources for a more in-depth overview. The final layer of automaton theory was based on a mathematical model of computation that Alan Turing proposed in 1936, dubbed the Universal Turing Machine. Once again, like those before him, Turing broke down logic into a mathematical form, in this case translating it to a machine that reasons through abstract symbol manipulation, much like the symbolic reasoning done in our minds. As stated earlier, early computing devices were hard-coded to solve problems. Turing's belief with his universal computer was, instead of deciding what a computer should do when you build it, design a computer in such a way that it can compute anything that is computable, so long as it is given the right instructions. This concept is the basis of modern computing. At this point in the 1930s, with the field of modern computing officially born and rapidly evolving, the concept of artificial beings and intelligence based on computing technology began permeating across mainstream society of that time. The first popular display of this was Electro, the nickname of a humanoid robot built by the Westinghouse Electric Corporation, and shown at the 1939 New York World Fair.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be very glad to tell my story. I am a smart fellow, as I have a very fine brain.
Electro wowed many, and one can say is the basis of how mainstream society thinks of a computing-based artificial intelligence, as evident by the various movies, TV shows, books, and other entertainment media portraying the concept. As a side note, Westinghouse's Electro draws many parallels to modern-day Hanson Robotics' Sophia. They are not truly intelligent, but are more of a way for mainstream society to get a glimpse of future technology. In other words, they are imitating intelligence. Going back to Alan Turing in the 1950s, he pondered this dilemma of true versus imitated intelligence in section 1 of his paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, titled The Imitation Game. In this paper, he lays the foundations for what we now refer to as the Turing test, the first serious proposal in the philosophy of a computing-based artificial intelligence. The Turing test essentially states if a machine acts as intelligently as a human being, then it is as intelligent as a human being. An example often thrown around is the online chat room, in which if we are talking to an AI bot but aren't told this until after and believe during the conversation that it was a human, then the bot passes the Turing test and is deemed intelligent. Around the same time as Turing's proposal, another titan of the field of computing, the father of the information age, Claude Shannon, published the basis of information theory in his landmark paper, A Mathematical Theory of Communication, in 1948. Information theory is the backbone of all digital systems today and a very complex topic. In layman's terms and in relation to computing, Shannon's theory states all information in the entire universe could be represented in binary. This has profound implications for artificial intelligence, meaning we could break down human logic and more so the human brain and replicate its processes with computing technology. This fact was demonstrated a few years later in 1955 by what is dubbed as the first artificial intelligence program called Logic Theorist, a program able to prove 38 of the first 52 theorems in Principia Mathematica, a 3-volume work on the foundations of mathematics. This program was written by Alan Newell, Herbert Simon, and Cliff Shaw, who, like philosophers and mathematicians before them, also believed human thought could be broken down, with them stating, "The mind can be viewed as a device operating on bits of information according to formal rules." That being, they realized that a machine that can manipulate numbers could also manipulate symbols, and that symbol manipulation is the essence of human thought. As a fun side note, Herbert Simon stated, "A system composed of matter can have the properties of mind," a throwback to alchemy of the Middle Ages in which matter was attempted to be converted to mind. Also during this time period in 1951, Marvin Minsky, one of the founding fathers of the field of artificial intelligence, built the first machine incorporating a neural net, the Stochastic Neural Analog Reinforcement Calculator, SNARC for short.